You're listening to The Bible Guys, a podcast where a couple of friends talk about the Bible in fun and practical ways.
Hey, welcome everybody. We are so appreciative that you have tuned in or, watching.
So appreciative.
The Bible Guys.
So appreciative.
Yeah, I think we are.
Yes,
and
we're just bursting at the seams with appreciation.
Yes, well, I always am, Jeff. I don't know about you. I can't speak for you.
I am. I'm telling you.
I actually believe you.
I'm always bursting at the seams with being dumbfounded. I just can't believe people keep tuning in. So that's amazing.
We do appreciate it very much.
Absolutely.
And
it's phenomenal.
Today, Desiree, who has become famous.
She's super famous.
If we ever change staff members,
we're gonna be in trouble.
We're gonna be in trouble. If we ever
be a mutiny.
Yeah, if there'd be like, and then the new hiree would be like somebody like Sally. Yeah. And then we're gonna say when Sally, people would be like, boo,
yeah.
Right? Anyway, so it's Desiree right now.
Now we can't hire a Sally.
Right. My mother-in-law's name's Sally. I just said that. Uh-huh. So Desiree is gonna ask us to do something she's never asked us to do before, which is to do a draft list on iconic duos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the way she wrote it was, Jeff and Chris are our favorite iconic duo. For today's draft list, let's pick some of our other favorite iconic duos. So rock, paper, scissors, see who goes
rock,
first.
Paper, scissors, ready?
Ready? One, two, three, shoot.
Oh, we both did scissors.
1, 2, 3, shoot. Oh,
we both did paper.
1, 2, 3, shoot.
I did rock, he did scissors.
Yes, okay.
There we go. Okay. Iconic duos.
I know who you're going to choose.
Iconic duos. Well, I'm going to choose one you're not going to choose right off the top.
Well, I know what you're going to choose.
Sam and Frodo.
What? That's where your brain went? Or are you just trying to pick one?
I'm just messing with you.
Go ahead. Oh, that's what you're saying.
That's what I just chose.
Okay, you just chose
Sam and Frodo from Lord of the Rings.
Then I have to choose Batman and Robin.
Yeah, I knew you would. That's why I gave it to you.
Well, I don't like Batman.
You're the superhero guy.
But
I know. I wanted to leave it for you. I wanted you to choose it because it's low-hanging fruit. I wanted to hear you say.
Well,
is that an iconic duo?
Batman and Robin?
Yes.
Well, they were known as the dynamic duo.
Dynamic duo.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In fact, I would venture to say they may be, according to just social polls, maybe because we all learned them as children, right? In our generation.
Yes.
I would say people who are older than us, no. But I would say for younger, yeah, I even today.
Okay.
Wouldn't you think that
yes.
somebody who's like 20 years old, if they said name an iconic duo, don't you think they would say Batman and Robin
first?
would
be number one.
I think so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, go
I
ahead.
rejected it on purpose because I wanted you to say it.
Sam and Frodo.
Okay.
By the way, I hate that, right? like I wanted to like the Sam and Frodo so much, but then I know.
It's why I chose Sam and Frodo, because you hate them, and then I forced you to say Batman and Robin.
Remember the journey to the very last scene when he's trying to get up to the mountain to throw it in?
Yep.
And it's so long and drawn out, and then there's all these close-ups where they're staring at one another, and he's like, "It's me, you're Sam," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
Well, that's Peter Jackson. That's not the book.
I'm like, I know, but I'm like, let the pain end.
Yeah.
It was so painful. Anyway, go ahead.
I'm gonna say. Michael and Scotty. Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen.
Oh, yeah, of course. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Michael. Yeah, that's a great duo.
Yeah. Iconic.
Very iconic.
Yes.
In the history of sports, there's no doubt.
Yep.
I'm going to say Laurel and Hardy. To give
over Abbott and Costello?
Oh, well.
Really?
Yeah, well, here's the reason why. Laurel and Hardy came to my mind because my grandfather used to say Laurel and Hardy.
Oh, okay.
That and Step and Fetch It.
Step and Fetch It.
Yeah,
Laurel
but
and Hardy.
I'm not choosing Step and Fetch It.
Okay.
I'm choosing Laurel and Hardy.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say Butch and Sundance.
Butch and Sundance.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay,
Butch
that's
Cassidy
great.
and the Sundance Kid.
Yeah.
I used to love those books, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And then I'm going to say, let me think. I didn't think this through.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, how about this one? Ready? We're going to go a different genre. How about Sonny and Cher? All right. So this would be more like my mom growing up, right? Like it's either like Donnie and Marie or Sonny and Cher in the music world. Captain and Tennille. I'm going to say Sonny and Cher. I'm going to give tribute.
Okay. How about let me see. Andy and Barney.
Andy and Barney?
There you go.
Wow, what is that again?
Andy Griffith.
Andy Griffith and Barney. Yeah. Okay, and then it's my last one, right? Because she said 4. Okay, here we go. Ready? I'm gonna go for. I'm going for all the gamut here. I'm gonna go with Shaggy and Scooby.
Oh man,
that's a great one.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
So I almost did Bugs and Daffy.
Oh, but they weren't necessarily the duo.
I know.
Where you see one, you see the other kind of thing.
Yeah. But still, when you think of Looney Tunes, it's Bugs and Daffy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good job.
Yes.
I like that one. Shaggy and Scooby.
Yeah, that's great, right?
Yeah, it's such a good one. All right. Well, hey, thanks, Des. That was incredibly enlightening.
Yes, I think so too.
Now, what ones did we miss? Did we miss any really important?
Well, I think I sort of named a few of them, but I know there's going to be ones that people are going to type in.
Mickey and Minnie.
Yes, like things like that. Things like that, where they're like, come on, people.
Yeah.
Right? There's got to be ones that are like that.
I can't think of any others. Can you?
Yeah. Well, we could look it up if we really wanted to.
People are going to start sending in
famous duos.
Complaints. Yes. All right. Well, hey, that was just off the top of our heads, and that was a fun one. So thank you, Des. We had a lot of fun with that. So yesterday we read from Deuteronomy chapter 5.
Yes.
Where God reestablishes through Moses. He's reminding them of the importance of the commandments. And then he unpacks a couple of these ideas, particularly the first one. And so I'm going to just go ahead. We were only going to read just a few verses.
Yes.
But I think I'm going to read the whole chapter, and there's a reason for it. So Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 1 says, these are the commands. Remember, he's still talking.
Yes.
He's still talking. This is all the same conversation as what we had yesterday, only expanded. He says, these are the commands, decrees, and regulations that the Lord your God commanded me to teach you. You must obey them in the land you're about to enter and occupy. And you and your children and grandchildren must fear the Lord your God as long as you live. If you obey all his decrees and commands, you will enjoy a long life. Listen closely, Israel, and be careful to obey. Then all will go well with you, and you will have many children in the land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, promised you. Listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. And you must love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all your soul, all your strength, and you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you're at home and when you're on the road and when you're going to bed and when you're getting up. Tie them to your hands and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. The Lord your God will soon bring you into the land he swore to give you when he made a vow to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's a land with large, prosperous cities that you did not build. The houses will be richly stocked with goods you did not produce. You will draw water from cisterns you did not dig, and you will eat from vineyards and olive trees you did not plant. When you've eaten your fill in this land, be careful not to forget the Lord, who rescued you from slavery in the land of Egypt. You must fear the Lord your God and serve him. When you take an oath, you must use only his name. You must not worship any of the gods of neighboring nations, for the Lord your God, who lives among you, is a jealous God. His anger will flare up against you, and he will wipe you from the face of the earth. You must not test the Lord your God as you did when you complained at Massah. You must diligently obey the commands of the Lord your God, all the laws and decrees he's given you. Do what is right and good in the Lord's sight, so all will go well with you. Then you will enter and occupy the good land that the Lord swore to give your ancestors. You will drive out all the enemies living in the land, just as the Lord said you would. In the future, your children will ask, what is the meaning of these laws, decrees, and regulations that the Lord our God has commanded us to obey? Then you must tell them, we were Pharaoh's slaves in Egypt, but the Lord brought us out of Egypt with his strong hand. The Lord did miraculous signs and wonders before our eyes, dealing terrifying blows against Egypt and Pharaoh and all the people. He brought us out of Egypt so he could give us this land he had sworn to give our ancestors. And the Lord our God commanded us to obey all the decrees and to fear him so he can continue to bless us and preserve our lives as he has done to this day. For we will be counted as righteous when we obey all the commands the Lord our God has given us.
I find this chapter very comforting.
Yeah.
I find it very, it's like, to me, it feels like a warm blanket. It's like what God is saying is he's saying, I care so much about you that I'm giving you my decrees, my rules. And if you just trust in me, not in anybody else, one God, right? Then you'll live a long and happy life.
That's right.
And what he's really saying is he's saying, I've given these things not not to bother you or to, for your, to make you frustrated or anger. I'm giving everything for your benefit. And he's not demanding, which is another thing too. It's not like do this or else. It doesn't have that parent like go to your room kind of a thing. It's what it's saying is like, hey, I'm saying it strongly, but it's also an invitation. Right. So just please obey.
Yeah.
And to me, it feels great to me because it's even back then when people are often quick to say the Old Testament is, the wrathful God, which is, there's a lot of truth to that. But there's that type of spirit. Well, that's not this type of spirit here. So for me, this is a great chapter.
Yeah. So verse 4 is the foundational verse for Judaism and is a key concept within Islam and is fundamental to Christianity. So it's kind of interesting. I'm not saying that those all equate. I'm just saying this is a very important concept. And that is, listen, O Israel, the Lord our God is our God, the Lord alone. Or it could have been translated, the Lord our God is one Lord, or the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Or, as the Jews would quote it, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Right? And this is called the Shema within Judaism, and it's often repeated. And this is the foundation to the idea of monotheism, that the fact that there's one God, mono being one, theism being God, study of God or belief in God. So monotheism stands in contrast to most of the rest of the religions in the world, and almost all of the religions of that time.
Right.
Were polytheistic, poly meaning many. So many different gods, as opposed to having one God.
Yeah.
And that's foundational to, as he's trying to establish, don't have any other gods before me. He's saying, by the way, I just want to remind you, there's only one God.
Yeah.
So the rest of these are just idols. So stop making idols, stop bowing down.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring up something that I rarely ever bring up, even with me and you, but my brother Jim is active in with people from India. Remember that? Yeah. I mentioned that once or twice. So my brother Jim, who was a pastor for years and years, and then all of a sudden he's now working with creationism. He's working for a company. I should know the name of it, but it's a company that works on creationism and it's versus evolution, and it's pretty cool. And he's a video guy, a content guy. Anyway, so he's been doing that for the past several years and stepping away from the pastoral role. And but he's in a way he's still a pastor because in his church, people coming over from India, the government had called his church because it's so large, and they said, "Will you be able to develop a program within your church to welcome these people who step off the plane for the very first time from India into the United States?" And I guess Texas, for some reason, is some sort of a hub where they arrive from, I guess. So there's plenty of that going on. Well, it turns out that my brother Jim stepped up, volunteered, and then he became so integral in doing this that now the government officials call his house directly. And so now he has over 1,000, I believe, over 1,000 Indians, right? Who that's all he does is just has them over his house. So he posts pictures all the time. They're like, "Oh, we had this party. We had like a Christian Diwali," and it'll be like a huge picture of like 300-400 people, and it's Indians, and then you see like a couple white guys in the middle, right? and it's him and his wife. So anyway, the point is that I told you all that to say this. He has lived his life in trying to explain Jesus to a polytheistic culture.
Yeah. Because the Hindus have millions of gods.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so for you and me, we live in the United States of America, and it's easier to introduce the concept of of one God, and people don't necessarily, in the United States lean that way. But in his little world, he fights, and here's what he says. He says, "Chris," he says, "I spend all my time in convincing it in these 3 different steps." He said, number 1, Jesus is a God. And then Jesus is the God. And he said, a God among gods. Right. And he said, and then the 3rd step is Jesus is the only God. Right. Jesus, God the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, right? And so...
which is a pattern Paul uses in the book of Acts when he's at the...
Mars Hill.
At Mars Hill.
Yeah.
To the unknown God. Let me tell you about the God you don't know.
Right. So but it's just an incredible idea that you and I read this and we go, "Oh, cool, the Lord God is one." It's like, no. You don't understand, right? If you live in that, the
majority of the world does not believe that.
Right. And if you live in that world, do you understand how unbelievably difficult it is to introduce that concept to somebody, especially, in their day. Every Pharaoh was their own god, right? And they were a god among gods. And so, this idea is a radical concept, is what I'm saying.
So God is driving that deep, and then He's also telling them, "Hey, I'm going to send you into this land I promise, and you're going to have to remove these enemies of God." And that can be, you mentioned the wrathful God or whatever. People sometimes can be surprised by that idea, but you have to remember a couple things. One, all of the humans on the planet were part of God's creation, and some leaned into God, many rejected God, and then took up all kinds of evil. We know that the Canaanites did human sacrifice. We know that the Canaanites had sexual practices as their religion, as their religious practices, all these things, abuse of children, and it was pretty horrific. And so throughout history, God always calls people to Himself, and these people had rejected God aggressively. And so God is love. Certainly, God is also just, and God will always bring to justice every evil. And so He chose to use the people of Israel to bring the other Canaanites, the Canaanite people, to justice. And if you can think of this as in World War II, Nazism was taking over the world. This horrific concept that there are superior humans and inferior humans, and that we are going to not only promote what we view as the superior, but we're going to exterminate the inferior. And then the other nations, Great Britain, the U.S., the Allies, they rise up and go, no. And not only did they decide to defeat Nazism, they decided to try to eradicate Nazism, right? And you and I would stand up and go, yay, get rid of the Nazis, right? That was the concept. Now let's have this be a full-on religious affront against the Creator, raising up and celebrating other gods that are, quite honestly, they're demons. Right? So they're worshiping demons, and they're sacrificing humans and making sexual abuse and all kinds of things a part of their religious belief system. And God says, I'm going to use the people of Israel to wipe out these people who are living such horrific lives and choosing to go against God. If you can think of it in those terms, then it's not so much the harshness or the heavy-handedness of God as it is the justice of God. God draws a line and says, okay, they're done doing what they're doing. Right? And that's reasonable. God has the right, as the creator of the world, to execute justice. And we wanted Him to execute justice against Nazis.
Right.
So we have to be content that He would execute justice against everybody who stands against all that is good and moral and right.
Yeah, that's good.
And the abuse of humanity.
Yeah, that's a good perspective on that.
So anyways, He says this. You're going to go in, you're going to have houses you didn't build, you're going to eat food you didn't cook, and you're going to drink water that you didn't dig the wells, right? God says, I'm going to give you this because I'm going to run out these other people. But in between those two things, there's only one God, and I'm going to give you everything I promised to give you. In between, He says, hey, don't forget to teach your kids. Teach them over and over and over. Where you sit down, when you get up in the morning, when you sit down at the dinner table, when you're walking along the way, put it on the doorpost of your house, wear it, right? All of my words, and obey the words. Teach your children to obey my words.
Yeah, and it's a great pattern. I've definitely heard this in family ministries over and over because it says when you get up in the morning and when you lie down at night, right? And so it's like, and then when you walk along the road. So it indicates like it's when you walk down the road means like during the day, right? So it's the first thing in the morning. It's during the day. It's as you're doing life with them, and then it's also walking on the road, and then when you're putting them down at night, and then it says put it on your doorposts. Well, we all know what that means. That is a statement about what your home represents, and so every time you enter in through the gates of your house or through the front door of your house, it's what your house stands for, which is a very big statement. It's like, hey, as for me and my house, we're going to choose the Lord kind of thing. Right. So when you walk in my house, that's actually one of the two things that you see. You open up the front door and you walk in, and I think my wife has Psalms. This is the day the Lord has made, and then there's and you sort of turn left, and then there's another really big one that says, "As for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord." And again, it's just a statement about this is what this house stands for, and it's just a great pattern for us to say, okay, this is how God wants us to teach our families, and this is how our kids need to be raised up. under the nurturing and admonition and the instruction of the Lord, always.
There's something distinct that's missing in this passage that has permeated our culture, even Christian culture. God does not say, let your children grow up and try to figure out what they believe. Right? God doesn't say that. God says, teach them that you used to be slaves. Mom and dad in the modern time, teach them you used to live in sin and that you needed a Savior and that God rescued you and that there's a God in heaven that forgives sin and saves us from our sin, and that if we choose to go God's way, God will bless us. There's an underlying threat there as well, right? So he says multiple times, if you obey me, you're going to live well.
Right.
But the other side of that is if you don't, there's consequences. As a matter of fact, he ends the book of Deuteronomy that way. He says, I'm giving you a choice between life and death. Oh, that you would choose life. That's how he ends the book, right? There's a good way to live and a bad way to live. The good way, follow my way, and you're going to have a good life. You go your way, and you're going to have death. Everything's going to be destroyed. And so God does not say, let them figure it out on their own and make their own choices. God says, teach them from the day they're born. Teach them when they get up in the morning. Teach them when they go to bed at night. Teach them while you're walking along the way. Teach them while you're sitting down at dinner. Make sure it's on the doorposts of your home, meaning spread all throughout your house. Make sure that he's talking about, how the Orthodox Jews will wear the little box on their head and wear the box on their wrist. They're using that as this. But what he's saying is wear it. Have it be a part of your life all the time. Everywhere your children turn, they should see that there's a God in heaven and mom and dad genuinely believe in it. So I would reject the concept that we should just let our children figure it out. God is being very clear here. There's a right way and a wrong way to live. And mom and dad, it's your responsibility to teach them the right way. Teach them God's way. Point them to Jesus. And be aggressive about it. And he says, and by the way, they'll have a long, fulfilling, meaningful, blessed life if they do.
Yeah. And
it's the single best thing you can do for your kids.
I like the word intentionality, right? Yeah. So, just to do it haphazardly or to do it when you think of it, but rather to be intentional. And if you think about it, we're intentional about so many things in our lives. Right. We're intentional about making bagged lunches every day, right? We're sometimes intentional about checking the weather based on what we wear. We are intentional about so many things. We plan ahead and all of that, but we, hopefully financially plan for the long haul.
Right.
There's so many things that we have to think intentionally about. And so I would just say, if you have not thought about your family's spiritual journey, and, if you've not thought about an end product, and how to get there the best way, and an end product is, the success, which is what? It is when your children leave and their faith stops being mom and dad's faith and their faith becomes their own, and they adopt that. They'll be educated, they'll be grounded. What does the Bible say? Teach a child in the way that he or she should go.
Right.
And when they're old, they won't depart from it.
That's right.
Right. So just to be intentional about it, I think is just a great takeaway, probably the best takeaway, I think, from this chapter.
And so all of this is in the context of verses 4 and 5. So verse 4 being, there's only one God, worship him. Verse 5 is the verse Jesus quotes in Matthew chapter 22. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. And then from there, he immediately pivots to, so teach your children.
Yeah.
Right? So one of the indicators of whether or not mom and dad really, really, really do love God with all of who they are is if they're raising their children to do the same. Yeah. Right? It's not the only one, but it's one of them. That it's so important that you need to pass this on to your children.
Yeah.
And so for those of you that have grown children, hey, you don't do your battles with your words. You do your battles on your knees now. It's prayer. My grandmother prayed for my dad every day for 40 years. But for those of you that are listening that have children in your home, make it every morning. The thing my mom and dad did right out of all the things, because they had some rough boys to raise, was every morning and every night we spent time in the Word. Every morning my dad shared with us what it was he was reading in the Bible. Every evening before we went to bed, we read one of the Proverbs, right? Whatever the date was for that day. We read that proverb, and it was every single day.
Yeah.
And I would say that all 4 boys are in the ministry, serving the Lord. And there's a reason for that. Is because my mom and dad were faithful in this area. It's how they demonstrated that they loved God, is that they taught us. And
we certainly don't have time to get into what happens when a parent tries their best and then they have wayward sons and daughters.
Sure.
Because
God did.
Right.
God had 2 sons, Adam and Jesus, and only one of them turned out right.
That's right. That's right. So it's a, for anybody listening who, they're thinking, geez, I tried to do everything you're saying, and yet I'm just really praying and I don't understand what I did wrong. I would just say you're in good company. And just like Jeff said, the battle is on our knees at this point, right?
That's right. Yep.
So anyway, that's another topic for another day. But yeah, just do your best and serve your way back into their lives.
Be intentional and strong about it.
Intentional, strong, yep. Pray, everything else. So, hey, that is our time. So we will see you next time, hopefully, on the Bible Guys.